is Liban Shaknour.
My name is Abdurrahman Aden.
Hi, my name is Hamza Mohammed, and we're all in Nadia's class.
Hi, my name is Ahmed Mohammed, and I'm in Miss Nadia's Arab History and Culture class. So basically for this project, what we did was we went around campus and we interviewed a lot of students, faculty, and teachers.
So what's your views about Islam and the way it's portrayed in the West in social media?
Well, social media I think is different from news media. So like social media depends on who you're friends with on Facebook. So I think I have like different portrayals of Islam.
Yeah.
I think like in the news it's like more violent and my friends are just people.
Yeah. So are you currently updated with what's happening in the Middle East right now?
Very vaguely.
Okay. So what is one question you have for a Muslim that you always wanted to ask or ever came across your mind?
How are you?
Sweet.
How are you doing in Minnesota?
Great. That's all.
That without the media's influence, that Islamophobia would be at such great heights in the West?
It's a great question. I think the media plays a huge role in propagating Islamophobia and fear. But in my opinion, I don't think it's just the media. I think that a lot of the history of Islamophobia in the United States and in Europe and what we kind of think about as the West is oftentimes created and generated around political, military activity in Muslim lands and creating a fear and an idea that all Muslims are, in a sense, kind of enemies of the United States or the West. And so I think the history of Islamophobia is rooted in that political, military, and economic colonialism, long time, and today kind of imperial activities in Muslim lands. And then it gets generated in our own context as if there's somehow a problem with Islam or somehow that people must fear Muslims, etc. And the media reproduces that. So I wouldn't say that the media is creating Islamophobia, but it is reproducing those stereotypes and that fear. But what is really going on is that military, political, and economic activities in Muslim lands and against Muslim people.
Wow, that was a great answer. So this is kind of like a little piggyback off question, but do you think that there's more than just propagating the Islamophobia in the media? Wait, okay, let me start this again. So have you heard any positive messages about Islam, any news or social media outlets in recent times?
In the media?
Yeah, media and social outlets.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot in the local community here, there are groups that I think are doing great work. The Young Muslim Collective, that group is doing really great work. The Free the Bros group, the Minnesotans Against Islamophobia, CARE Minnesota. I mean, these on-the-ground community organizations, when they talk about and engage Muslim people, it is from a real first-hand experience. I also read media that isn't created by or within the United States. I think Al Jazeera has a very good approach oftentimes to political and economic interests, especially their opinion areas where you have scholars and experts talking about that. So I think it's out there. People just have to
access it.
Yeah, they have to be able to kind of consciously be thoughtful about the media that they listen to and that they look for information. The sad thing is that the media that just appears before most people is extremely biased and reproduces that Islamophobia. But if you look past just what the initial media you're seeing, you can find really good sources out there for information about Islam and about Muslim people.
That's a wonderful answer.
Okay,
So,
one question I have is, why do you think Muslim women wear hijab?
Why do Muslim women wear hijab?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a Muslim woman, obviously, but I have had over the 14 years here many Muslim women wearing the hijab or the niqab in my class, and I've often had an opportunity to ask them about why they wear it. The most common answer that I have heard is that Muslim women say they wear it because it's an act of faith, it's an act of piety, and it gives them dignity and autonomy to be judged on their character, their words, their activities, and not on just how they appear or how they look. And so that kind of combination of an act of faith and piety and an act of dignity and autonomy in public spaces is the most common answer that Muslim women who are veiled give to me. Now, the reality is that a lot of young girls wear the hijab because people that they love and admire wear it. You know, they see their mom and their aunts and their grandparents, and they see powerful, articulate, intelligent women wearing the hijab. And so young girls will put it on, 6 years old, 8 years old, they'll put it on because their heroes wear it as well. I have 2 daughters who are 8 and 10 years old. They are not Muslim, but they love to wear the hijab. They wear it because they have a lot of Muslim women who they admire and they love who wear it as well. And I'll tell you a quick story. I asked my daughter, who's 10, my kids often wear the hijab to school. And I asked her one day, Cecilia, why do you think Muslim girls wear the hijab? So I'm asking my 10-year-old. She looked at me and she said, because they love God. And I said, Cecilia, that's a great answer. And if anybody asks you why you're wearing the hijab, you can say the same thing.
100%.
One more question. Do you think Islam brings violence or teaches violence? Or condones violence?
Yeah, good question. I don't think that Islam supports violence, particularly in the sense of violence against innocent people or aggressive forms of violence. I think those forms of violence have always been condemned by Islamic teachings, and even in early Islamic empires and practices, most of the time that work was trying to avoid violence, to enter into peace treaties, and to reduce the violence at the time. Now, I will say that, like all religions and all societies, there is a place for violence, but only in the sense of when a group of people are under severe and extensive persecution and oppression, facing, for example, crimes against humanity or genocide. I do believe that people have the right to defend themselves, and if violence is necessary as a last resort, I would support that. In the same way that in the United States history, there has been violence used to gain freedom. In African liberation movements, some of them have used violence to gain liberation and freedom. I think most people accept this. That is in Islamic teachings and its history, where especially marginalized and oppressed groups, as a last resort, could use violence for freedom themselves and other people, to take out vicious forms of oppression. All religions support that, and all societies support that as well. So it's nothing unique in the Islamic religion. I will say that for the early Muslim community, some of you might know that the Prophet Muhammad begins to hear the revelations in 610. From that point, the Muslim community was under severe persecution and oppression. And there was no revelation that allowed them to defend themselves for 13 years, right? They had to, for 12 years, they had to seek out support and help from the Christian African empire and polytheist communities, even asking them for support and protection. So there was a long time before the permission was that you can defend yourselves, because the Muslim community was on the brink of annihilation. And at that point, they did defend themselves, and in my view, they had the right to defend themselves, as any people do.
What I learned about this video is not everybody thinks Islam is a bad religion. It's just basic, Some people are educated about Islam and some people are not, so.
Yeah. One thing I learned about Islam are people. that we questioned so far are people have different opinions on Islam, and not everybody think Islam is a violence religion or religion that teaches violence.
What I gained personally from this survey that we took here was that most people, when it comes to like asking the questions, put on the spot, they think what the media thinks, like it's groupthink.
Yeah.
Whatever the media puts out for them, they just regurgitate it when they ask people, when they're asked, when they're questioned. So it's a lot of American people, when it comes to Islam, it's a groupthink. They don't really expand, they don't look out their own way, they don't do their own research, and they just keep repeating these stereotypes over and over again. So I feel like we, kind of put it out there, we exposed it, we put it out there, and it's a very beneficial thing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Claim that it is more than the rights that the modern democracies now give them. But unfortunately, there is mixing between the religious commands in Islam that gives the women a lot of rights and the cultural things. I can give you an example. We as Arab and Eastern people, we have certain cultures even before Islam. So these cultures, some of them compatible with Islamic rules and Islamic teachings, and some of them are against the Islamic teachings. Some of the people are mixing these things. Sometimes they took some of the things from their culture and they feel that it is part of Islam. Like the people who prevent their girls from learning or going to school. This was something general, or in a country like Egypt in 1950s and 60s, something like that. But the people at that time thought that it is part of the Islam that no, girls cannot go to school, cannot deal with men. It is part of the culture, But the people did not know that it is against the teachings of Islam. Islam gives the woman the right to study, to go to school, to learn, and even to teach people. And one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ used to give lectures to companions and to teach them Islam. I can summarize the rights of the woman in Islam, that the woman in Islam is like a diamond and should be taken, should be, the man should take care of her all the time, and the society. While she is young, or the young girl, her family should take care of her to teach, to give her, to covering her living expenses, something like that, and to raise her and give her all the right that any child take. And the second, when she grow up and be like right to select the person who that she wanna be her wife or something like that, and no one can obligate her to do or to marry from someone she doesn't like. And this is, by the way, mentioned in the Quran in a clear statement. But some people in our culture, unfortunately, they follow the culture more than the teaching of Islam. The third, when she is a wife, she is not asked to pay any penny for the family unless she admit that, or she accept that. She has her own financial status or something. So her husband is responsible for her living expenses. Even she's working, he has no rights to get the money from her unless she wanna help him or something like that. If he is poor or or cannot cover the expenses of the life of all the family, she can help him, but she's not asked, she's not obligated. You can answer this question better than us because you're a Muslim girl, but is there anybody enforced you to wear hijab?
No.
Yeah, this is your, it is part of your, you know, you accepted that, you took this decision by yourself because you wanna obey your God, right? Because you know that it is one of the orders of the God to Muslim women to cover their heads and to be modest in their outfits, right? So this is part of the deen, and you accepted that out of your respect of your God, out of your obedience to God, you do that. Nobody can enforce you. This is actually the situation. To be honest, not all Muslims do that. In some countries, the non-educated people and the people who do not know the Islam very well, sometimes they enforce their girls to be covered. But this is against Islam. And they are doing that not because they want to obey the God, but just to be compatible with the culture. Because it is something ashamed in our culture. If there is a woman walking in the street showing her body and something like that, it is something ashamed for her husband, her son, her dad. So those men related to her feel ashamed, so sometimes they enforce her to avoid this shameful, look to them.
I feel great, number one, and I feel that there are a lot of challenges that Muslim women are facing here. Number one is when you have to wear hijab where the norm is not. So you have to keep your religion, and you have to keep holding in your religion, and you have to explain and defend your religion all the time. When it comes to raising your children, the Islamic culture have really strong stand towards the community and the family. Sometimes once the children hit the teenager, you feel that they separate from the family based on the society that they are living in. So this does not help the Muslim family to be connected as they are connected back home. So for example, if they are back home, there are a lot of masajid or a lot of mosque or the family, and if you feel that your child did something bad, anyone from the community can come and correct him for you. So here you are the only one to raise your child, but back home everyone in the community is helping you to raise your family. So, if I send my child to public school, I have to explain to the school that, for example, my daughter is not allowed to be in the swimming pool with another boy. So the teacher and even the instructor, he has, like, if she's in swimming, the instructor has to be a female, and there is no boys, and even windows has to be shaded. What other a lot of challenges, like small things that we have to make big effort for the school to know that Muslim parents are not allowing their children to face that.
How do you feel as a teacher do you think people look down on you because you are like a Muslim woman, or?
No, I did not face that. Actually, I feel the respect. No, I did not feel that at all, neither from students or from the colleagues. I have no problems with that at all.
maya waa ku faraxsana xijaabka inaa xirto wax dhibna iguma hayso qof igu qasbana ma jiraan xijaabka in la xirtana diinteena farayso qof walba يعني والدكayga waajibkiisa wuu gutay wuxuu i baray inuu xijaabka fiican yahay kana wuu xun yahay marka aniga hadda maadaama aan weynaaday marka yarana ay soo bareen يعني qasab iguma ahan hadda xijaabka dhigto hadda wax igu sameynayaan ma jirto laakiin aniga waxaan dareensanahay in xijaabka wax fiican yahay ina xirto يعني waxaan dareemayaa يعني ina xirto aaminaad yacni waxaan aaminsanahay xijaabka xiridiisa inay wax fiican tahay inay asturo tahay diinteenana way noo sheegaysaa yacni qof igu qasba ma laha adoo yaraa lagugu soo barbaarinayaa markaa weynaatidna adiga ku qosaysaa haddii aa isqaawinaysa haddaa xijaab xiranaysa marka xijaabka xirideeda ani waxaa dareemayaa inaa ku faraxsanahay xiridiisa xataa midka dheeraa jeclahay inaa xirto markasto cid igu qasabtana ma laha cid idhaahda ma jirto inaa kan xiro ama kan xiranin haaf ma xiran kartid mid dheer xiro cid igu qasabta ma laha kulli waxaa waaye ani le waa jooskayga because hooyaday iyo aabaheed way soo bareen ayaga cid igu qasabtana ma jirto.
Hi, this is Abu Abdo, and I will be talking about why I wear hijab. And the reason why I wear hijab is because I'm a Muslim and I want to be identified as a Muslim woman. And that is part of my religion, wearing hijab. I know it's really hard. Basically, in America, as I came here, I experienced a lot. The way people stereotype me and then talk to me. It's like basically they don't have the knowledge of why we wear hijab. It's good to explain it to them or like tell them why we wear hijab. It's not just any different than other religions, like Orthodox wear hijab too, and Jude wear hijab too. So even just the name of hijab as a Muslim, I mean, even though they call it different way in other religions, but they still do wear it. It's not something that different or make you, even though Muslim women practice it more often, I mean, people should know that other religion wear it too. So for me, it's not that difficult to understand. And then we're not forced to wear hijab. Like, I am not forced to wear hijab. I chose to wear hijab. It's like the more I know about my religion is, the more I feel connected. And then I chose to wear hijab to follow my religion and like to have a faith in my religion, and that's why I wear hijab.
I think in Islam women do have right, even as much right as men, mainly because in Allah's eyes everyone is equal. It doesn't matter between race. Women's right in Islam is not bad as America seem like it. They don't really have knowledge what the Quran teaches, and in every culture, in every different religion, they make their own conclusion about different aspects of any religion, and Islam is fair in my eyes.
Hi, my name is Amal, and for our project we did discuss a bunch of different topics about women in Islam, how they're treated. There are a lot of misconceptions that they are mistreated and oppressed, and we hope that by watching this video you guys did learn a lot.
Hi, my name is Selma, and we did our project on women in Islam, and after watching this video I hope you learned so much about the role women play in our religion and in our culture.
The most relevant and most current question that I can think of is why do you guys think that the UN demoted Palestine from being a country to being a territory?
During that time, the Islamic region during the Ottoman Empire was one country. So the demarcation of the countries, the borders between the countries nowadays are actually done by the European colonizers at that time. They were like working together to divide the Ottoman Empire among the British, the French, the Germans, the Portuguese, and so on and so forth. What happened with that, what we call Palestine nowadays, was under the British mandate. So after World War I, and what happened to the people in Europe and the fighting there, and a lot of casualties happened, and then World War II to happen, and they had applied for the Jews in Germany. The Britain decided to give a reward for the Jews, and Balfour, that's the Secretary of Foreign Affairs in Britain, gave them a promise that we will create a country for all the Jews in the world. And they give them choices at that time. There were different choices. One of them was in Argentina, and one of them is in Uganda, and one of them is in Palestine. And of course, if you are a Jew, if you are a Jewish person, and you are given the choice to have a permanent state, you will actually work for Jerusalem. These are sacred places for the old religions, for Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. So what happened is that the British occupation at that area, after the Ottoman Empire dissolved, they helped all the Jewish people from around the globe to come to the place we now call Palestine. Because at that time there was no country, there were no independent countries. They were just the Ottoman Empire. So they gave them that chance to come to this area and to settle there. And when they came, they found that there were Arab people. There were people living there, what we call now the Palestinians. And then there was fight between the invaders, the people coming from abroad, with the people who are living there. And we had a series of wars between the Israelis and the Arabs living at that area, and it was started like this. It started with so a lot of people came like in succession from Europe and other places until 1948, after World War II, and then they wanted to declare a state of Israel. So now there was no state of Israel before 1948. You know that. There is no such a state called Israel before 1948, May 1948. When they started that war, there was an official war. At that time, there was an official war between the Arabs and the Israelis. And what happened is that at that time, the United Nations declared the state of Israel as a result of this war.
To this issue, actually, although the oppression practiced on Arab people, or especially Palestinian people in Palestine after the occupation at 1948, and after even the occupation or the war of 1967, the Palestinian people accepted the solution if they let the refugees, Palestinian refugees, to come back to Palestine again, and to divide the lands based on the borders before 1967. And there was some resolutions and some United Nations decisions, something like that, give the Palestinians this right. Although it is oppressing the Arab people, but and although they accepted that, and even Israel did not accept that, and refusing the return of the refugees to Palestine, and refusing also to get back to the previous borders before 1967. So in one statement we can say it is double standard of the United or the global system against Arab and Palestinians in this territory, and also some, it is, if you look at Israel, it is the only country that declared itself as a religious country. And if you hear the Mr. President Trump in his campaign, when he said that we will declare Eastern or East Bank as the capital of Israel, and he said this clearly, it is religious capital of Jewish. Although the democracy does not accept any religious state, and when they fight ISIS, and we fight ISIS actually, and we refuse them because they declare themselves as religious state. So it is out of, I call it hypocrisy and also double standard of the global system. And unfortunately, the Arab people of Palestine and Arab at all do not have strong media to let people know the truth, and the people, and this is because of the oppression practiced on them by the tyrants who ruled them in their countries now. It is very complicated.
I think it's commonly held perception that Muslim countries are getting ready to do battle with Israel?
For local propaganda from the regimes. But now most of the Islamic countries, or all of them, they abide by the international law. All of them are United Nations countries. They work, even they cannot even implement the resolution of the UN Security Council. They are not preparing for war against Israel at all. Egypt has a peace treaty with Israel. This is the first ever peace treaty between an Arab country and Israel, and it was unilateral, so it was done to return back most of Sinai to Egypt. Now it's, and if you look at Syria now, Syria has, is in a turmoil, in a bad situation. Nobody is preparing, and she has been attacked every day by Israel, just for one reason or another. But I don't think that there is any kind of preparation for a war against Israel at this moment at all, or even in the near future. And even the Arab League, the countries of the Arab region, they had what's called an initiative, a peace initiative, that they say simply in 2 lines: return the land of up to 1967, not 1948. So talk about 1967 border in return for complete peace with all Arab countries. So I think this might give Israel an impression that the Arabs are very weak, so that if we just continue being obstinate all the time, we might get more gains. So this is the last situation now. The Arab countries are proposing a comprehensive peace.
The people in Egypt, if you ask any young child in the street, do you believe that Israel has any right to be in Palestine land? He will say no. And they feel that they are enemies for them, not because of their religion, but because it is something normal. If you study biology, like me, I'm a biologist. If there is a microorganism wanna colonize in another colony of another microorganism, it will have some antagonistic effect. It's something innate in all humans. So all of us, even in Egypt and all countries on the borders with Palestine or occupied Palestine, we even don't say Israel, we say occupied Palestine, because it is occupied. So the people believe that they don't have any right in this land. Although out of the conditions of the global system and the United Nations, and they found that they don't have the facilities to oppose all of the world now who hypocrite to the Israel. They said, okay, as Dr. Muhammad said, officially we have this, or this is what government says, that we can make this peace treaty with Israel if they accept the conditions to go back to the borders before 1967 and let the refugees come back and stop colonization. Because now, one of the conflicts between President Obama and Netanyahu during his, this 8 years of the President Obama, that he asked him to stop colonization, because the people are talking about peace treaty and peace, negotiation, and they are continuing the building the colonies on the lands of Palestinians they have currently. So every day they increase their lands, expand it, and they kick out people from their homes. And if you look at YouTube, you may find a lot of videos showing that the soldiers of Israel comes to the innocent people in their homes and kick them out, detain the father and the kids and the boys, and kick out the women outside, and destroy or collapse their homes and take this land and build their colonies in there. So this is one of the conflicts between Netanyahu and Obama last 8 years. Now the situation changed because Trump is supporting this policy of Israel, and so I think this is enough to give you some information about that. Yeah.
What is Sharia law?
So my understanding of Sharia law is a law governed by the people of the land, and it comes from, it's an Arabic word, and the Sharia law is basically comes from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Rasul, and also some of the Hadith. So that combination together combined has been used as a law of the land, just like we have the laws here. So really, what that saying is that not everybody follows Sharia law, but most of the countries who practice Sharia law, that is the law that every individual who live that country have to follow. That's what my definition of Sharia law is. All right. So this is my group. This is Abdi Rashid. I'm gonna interview my friend here, Brian. Brian is from Minnesota. I mean, originally from California. Currently resides in Minnesota. So I'm gonna ask you 2 questions, Brian.
Okay.
And these questions are about when you hear about the word Muslim in America, what comes in your mind, first thing that pops up on your mind?
Well, I mean, due to all of the worldwide events that's going on, with the different groups, it's sad to say, man, Muslims, sometimes it's looked at as a bad name.
Okay. So when you hear, I mean, just what that means to you, like, do you believe it's a bad thing in terms of just of the perception that people believe about Muslims? Do you think that is something true though, or
no? Not at all.
No?
There's definitely good people in all religions, all demographics, all social groups. It really takes. It's a situation where you have bad people in those groups that put a bad image onto, religious beliefs.
Okay. And what about the word Sharia, which is the Islamic law that U.S. government or people who live in this country, in the Western countries, against, or they think Sharia law is something that is against the American values? When you hear that word Sharia law, what does that mean to you, or what pops up when you hear it?
Well, to me, I always thought like 72 virgins is kind of like it's a different kind of number. I always thought like, why not 100? I honestly, to me, it's I respect others' beliefs, and but I don't have not much of like a particular like judgment on that,
Sure. And what about, do you think that Sharia law is an Islamic law? Do you think that would be a good, something that Muslim people can bring to this country and also practice that? Is that something that you think?
Yeah, I feel like everyone should be able to practice what they believe in. I have my beliefs, and it shouldn't be that we can't be open to it, because at the end of the day, America's a melting pot, and that's what it should be, is that this is the land of the free.
Okay.
To be able to freely have any type of religion or demographic or beliefs.
Sure. So what I'm asking is the law. Can they bring, because America already have a constitution and law, right? But the Sharia law is kind of a little bit different than the law that we already have here. Most of the Sharia law is, of course, something that we already do here as a law. But there are certain things that is a little different than the law we have here. Do you think those should be acceptable for people who want to practice their own laws while they live in America? Is that acceptable to you?
I don't know. I don't know. It's not really for me to. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's different,
Okay. But do you think that would be a good idea though, to have, or it would be something that against the, I mean, it would be something that you would not want it to see in this country, having 2 different laws, or certain community have their own laws, or bringing up their.
Yeah, I think that should be good. I mean, because within different communities, there's different people.
Okay.
From California being different to Minnesota, there's a large Muslim population here, and different people from different areas. So
Sure.
it should be different in
Cool.
a sense. That's why we have state laws and local, and but hey, you never know.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Brian. That's the only 2 questions I wanted to ask you. Thank you so much, okay?
It was more like 8, but I appreciate
More
it.
like 8. Alright, man, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna interview Muhammad. This is Abdul Rashid, and Muhammad is from Minnesota, and he's my co-worker, so I'm gonna ask him 2 questions. And Muhammad, I wanted to ask you, first of all, when you hear the word Sharia law, what comes in your mind?
Islamic law.
Islamic law, okay. And other than that, when you live in America and you hear that American people saying that Sharia law is something that they have a negative thoughts about towards the Sharia law in general.
Yeah.
Do you believe it's something that is negative?
Okay. Anytime you hear anything about something, doesn't matter what it is. If you hear nothing but good stuff,
right,
then you would automatically think it's good.
Right.
If you hear nothing but bad stuff, you're automatically going to think it's bad. Also, at the same time, if the people who say we follow this, this is the Islamic law, this is Sharia law.
Right.
If the people who are following it are not following it correctly,
right,
then of course it's going to look bad.
Right.
The Islam is very easy. We make it hard on ourselves. We make it difficult upon us.
Right.
I'm not a scholar. You are not a scholar.
Right.
Half of the people who claim they follow Sharia law, they are not scholars.
Right.
The Islam is simple. But the simplicity of it, you have to have somebody to be able to interpret it. Also, at the same time, if you read an ayah from the Quran, or if you read a hadith, you have to read the whole story. You have to read the whole thing. Because if you take just one small portion of it, you're not going to understand the whole thing.
Right.
So, my personal opinion, that the situation that we're in now, or the reason why the Sharia law has the stigma that it does, is because nobody understands it, Muslim or non-Muslim. And in order to understand it, you have to be able to read it, understand it, and interpret it the right way. And if you don't have the ability to, don't try.
Okay.
Find somebody to do it for you.
Great. Thanks so much. And the other one is in Muslim in general, when you live in other Muslim nations and we come to this country, people who live in this country lately don't like Muslim in general, some of them. And when they hear the word of Muslim, they think, they have a negative connotations. What do you think about that when you hear, as a Muslim person who live in the West, when you encounter people who are not Muslims, or when they hear your name is Muhammad, or
So I'm from Egypt. I grew up in Egypt. When I moved here, I was younger, and I moved to the south. I moved to an area where there was very few non-Caucasian people. So the fact that I was different, I grew up experiencing that type of treatment and that type of atmosphere. So for me, when I see people and they say, "Oh, you're Muslim," and then they get afraid, I pity them because they don't know. They're ignorant of the Islam. They're ignorant of what the Islam really is and what the Islam really says, and they're just going off of the media.
Right.
So ultimately, the people who are afraid of Muslims or the Islam, they're afraid. So this is fear.
I'm Shai. And I'm Khalid. And Khalid, I'd like to ask you something. How did religion affect the Arabic culture and its social norms?
Islam originated in the Arab desert, and today 93% of Muslim Arabs comprise of the total Arab population. Islam has had a significant influence on the Arab culture. Due to the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, and his way of spreading Islam. But before his coming, the Arab Bedouins lived in a time where they held on to ancient teachings and tribalism. There was no unity, and except for immediate tribal structure, and each tribe was very hostile to one another. The raiding was also common, and there was a lot of feuds, vendettas, and fighting. There was a lot of bloodshed, and due to the lack of respect for life. But then Muhammad taught them unity, and he also brought up the Muslim brotherhood and sisterhood, and how we should respect each other. There was also, and then there was a mutual cooperation between both parties, as tribes in this case, and yeah, there was a respect for life. And also in the Quran it says, if you kill one human being, it's like you killed off the whole entire race. The next point I'd like to touch on is crime and moral feelings. At that time, generally, people were immoral. There was, on individual level, people were motivated by greed and other selfish desires, and they cared little for others. There was a lot of jealousy. There was jealousy. There was drinking. There was gambling. There was manslaughter. It was chaos. It was corrupt. There was, on top of that, there was no state legal system.
Wow.
Pretty much no laws existed, and yeah, they needed intervention pretty much.
So what happened when Islam came into?
When Islam came into teaching, he attacked all of these selfish desires, and it pretty much ensured the rights of other people. Yeah, pretty much. For example, like when it comes to stealing, they said if a thief steals, they would cut off his hand off, because thieving is really bad. Because if you start, you're gonna continue, and it's only gonna get bigger from there. And yeah, the teachings and the problems, they were touched on very strongly at that time. And the last point I'd like to check on is family and society. At that time, people were neglected, and people were not taken up. There was no roles pretty much. Everybody, it was a corrupt society pretty much. There was no obligation fulfilled. A lot of children were born out of wedlock. It was very disturbing. Dysfunctional, to say the least. And yeah, it was at a time where a father would bury her own daughter alive, his own daughter alive. It was very dysfunctional. But then Islam came, and he gave everybody a position and a role that they must fulfill. Like there was a husband, there was a wife, and yeah, he gave everyone their rights, and he also brought up marriage and protecting the chastity and moral excellence of other individuals. All these ideas and teachings that Islam has brought up is still used in today's culture, and yeah, it shaped Arab culture as we see it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalid. Thank you for your time, man. I appreciate you. Thank you.
I'm Amir.
And I'm Khalid.
Yeah, Khalid, how did religion make the Arab people the most advanced in the world?
I believe there is two reasons. Religion made Arab people the most advanced in the world and how we see them today. Starting with education and respect. Starting with education, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, hold education in high regard. He said, knowledge increases faith, so pursue more knowledge. The Prophet gave the lead as he taught in mosques, and that transitioned over to the first university in the world, Al-Khayrawan. And there was also hospitals that were set up. Medication followed Islamic armies, and the design from the mosques sprang Islamic construction and design. In Islam, there is no priesthood. There is no religious hierarchy. It commands each believer to seek knowledge and be aware of his or her obligation to God and as well as society. Thus, in Islam, the pursuit of knowledge is both a personal and social obligation. This push for knowledge is spurring the Islamic golden age, which spurred scientific growth, such as advancements in arithmetic, medication, and astronomy. These advancements help them find the direction of the Qibla and pilgrimage routes to follow, as well as the beginning of Ramadan and in the great feasts, as well as fixed times for prayer.
Yep.
There are also many inventions such as the windmill, the soap, optical science, the house of wisdom that preserves science and philosophical information, and many more pursuit the knowledge, and the Arab civilization shapes the world we see today. Respect was the other main factor which led to their advancement. After the Prophet beat the Al-Quraysh tribes, he entered in a peaceful manner. There was no bloodshed, there was no torture. He gave strict rules that they must follow as to not harming the unarmed, the women, the children, the elderly, and those in their religious sanctions. He said, there is no unnecessary destruction of property. These teachings it's stuck, and even after 100 years after the Prophet deaths, after the Islamic empire grew and expanded, they did not force Jewish or Christian or Hinduism, any other religion, to and not force them to follow Islam. He let them keep their religion and let them keep their faith or whatever they believe in. But they were still ruled over the Islamic empire. This respect was also part of the advancement for the Arab civilization how we see today. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Shire.
I'm Amir.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask you a question today. And the question is, what do you think the root cause of the Arabic Springs was?
Well, there were numerous factors that led to the protest. Human rights violations, political corruption, unemployment, extreme poverty, economic decline, and dictatorship or absolute monarchy. But the catalyst that brought everything together was a fellow named Muhammad Bouazizi from Tunisia, who set himself on fire after he was humiliated and degraded by a policewoman, after she slapped him and spat on him and confiscated his vegetable cart. So that led to the protests in Tunisia, and the Arab countries felt like dominoes.
Right. And so the next question is, in a case like Syria, would you say that the war would lead to a failed state like the states of Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, foreign involvement have played a huge role in prolonging the war in Syria, and the war has lost its civil cry, and people describing the war as overlapping proxy wars between regional and world powers. Russia, Turkey, Saudi, Israel too.
Israel too.
They all have their own agenda and they have their own reason in joining the war.
Right.
So as we're talking currently, Syria is in the direction of a failed state. But if want that to be reversed, the foreign involvement have to leave Syria and let them fight their own war.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Do you know that countries that were involved or are still involved in the Arabic Springs?
Yeah, there were various countries, Arab countries that were involved. The home country of the fellow that studied the Arab Spring, Muhammad Bouazizi, Tunisia was the first.
Tunisia, yeah.
And they spread to other Arab countries like Yemen, Egypt, Oman.
Oman, yeah.
Even some what do you call it? African countries like Sudan and Western Sahara also witnessed the Arab Spring.
Sure.
And the Arab Spring is still going in Syria and Yemen, you know, some places that are being fought.
Yeah.
So we don't know which countries will follow path, but we hope for world peace.
All right, man. Thank you, Amir.
Right.
That was great. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu
My name is Amir.
I'm Shire.
What do you think is the role of an Arab woman in the Middle Eastern society?
Right. In the pre-Islamic Arabia, women's status varied widely according to the laws and social norms that are already in place, right? In the prosperous southern region of Arabia, for example, religions like Judaism, Christianity had their sway amongst the people. In other places like Mecca, for example, where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, peace be upon him, was born, a tribal set of rights were already in place. This was also true amongst the Bedouin people, also known as the desert dwellers, and this code varied from tribe to tribe. Thus, there was no single definition, right? There was no single definition of the roles played, the rights held by women before the advent of Islam.
What role did women play in the Arab Spring?
Right, women's involvement in the Arabic Springs went beyond direct participation. You know, they were leading, organizing. You know, part of the cyber activism. Women helped spark the Arabic protests in several countries. You know, and actively participated in all of them. The demonstrations were based on the issues of freedom from tyranny, patriotism, and not really any religious ones. You know, Bahrain's uprising had some religious influence to it because many protesters were from Shia descent and were angry about the Sunni monarchy that was in place and discrimination against the Shias. However, the protest promoted democracy and the end of discrimination rather than a religious agenda. Many women's rights activists hope that the revolutions would lead to a more democratic society and thereby more women's rights, right? And however, there was no explicit push for that because there was no demonstrations for women's rights during those Arabic Springs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shire?
Yeah. Thank you.
You know, William Blake says the nakedness of a woman is the work of God. Chastity and purity have always been the great virtues that come naturally to women, but which men must learn. The Quran uses Mary, the mother of Christ, as the great paragon of chastity and virtue and purity of heart, and describes her as an ideal for men and women. An ideal for men and women. Quote, and God has made an exemplar for those who believe in Mary, who guarded her chastity. So we breathed our spirit into her, and she confirmed the pronouncements and scriptures of her Lord and was among the pious. It is from women then that men learn chastity and purity, which in turn protect the sacred nature of women, alluded to in the Arabic word for woman, hurma, which means that which is sacred. Now the failure of men in imitating women in their natural virtue has resulted in women rejecting the double standard of men and imitating men in their natural vice. The spiritual power of women is great, but so too is the power of their physical attraction to men. It is this power that causes vile men to dominate women and virtuous men to honor and want to protect them. But that physical power of the female form over men is a sensory power that veils men from her metaphysical meaning. Her sensual form prevents man lost in carnality from knowing her spiritual reality. She is the source of mercy in the world. The Arabic and Hebrew word for womb is raham. From that is derived the word for mercy, rahmah. An expression, and the womb is also an expression of the creative power of God in man. In degrading women, we degrade the highest qualities of our human nature. In elevating her, we elevate our highest nature. When her natural virtues, compassion, kindness, caring, selflessness, and love predominate in men, men are able to overcome their natural vices and realize their full humanity. When, however, those virtues are absent, men descend to the lowest of the low and are worse than beasts. In unveiling the outward beauty of a woman, we become veiled from her inward beauty. As a poet from the distant past, Jami', who was the equal of Rumi in Persian tradition, said, I said to my rosy-cheeked lovely, oh, you with bud-like mouth, why keep hiding your face like flirting girls? She laughed and said, unlike the beauties of your world, in the veil I'm seen, but without it I'm hidden.
How much do historical and religious grievances matter in this conflict?
In the Palestinian-Israeli conflict,
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
So
exactly.
many Israelis, to many Israelis, the country is a historic homeland, right? Which dates back to thousands of years ago. And in any case, the shadow of the Holocaust gives Jewish people the need for a strong Israel to continue and provide a viable homeland for the Jewish people. Meanwhile, for many Palestinians, right, and the Muslim world, their views that their historic homeland was hijacked, you know, for lack of a better word, from them in 1948. And they've been fighting, and they've been losing further ground ever since.
Okay, if you were in a situation, you know, in both camps, you know, you have your shoes in both camps, will you say the actions are justified?
Right. To be perfectly neutral in this, imagine you were an Israeli citizen, right? Hearing news or propaganda every day of rockets, you know, being dropped, and perhaps even seeing rockets fly over your head, right? Could you be blamed for wanting the IDF to deploy all of its resources, you know, trying to stop it? But on the flip side, you know, you have the, you can imagine if you were a Palestinian with living your everyday life, you know, impeded by Israeli strikes, Israeli blockades, you know, your family members being, you know, killed in front of your eyes, you witness constant harassment, and essentially, you know, what is prosecution, you know? Could you be blamed for thinking that Hamas, you know, are doing the right thing after all, you know? But still, you know, we have to consider that oppression does not breed justice, you know? And in my personal belief is, you know, the accounts I've heard from Palestinian people is that the Israeli government is doing vile atrocities, you know, like, you know, they're destroying people's lives, you know, and from what I gather, there's no excuse and there's no justification for that. So,